Very good. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm going. You're good.
So, James, you're from
Richard
Richard.
Richard Gamble
Richard Gamble,
from The Eternal Wall.
Eternal Wall. And where do you live?
So I live about 90 miles north of London in the United Kingdom. Married with 3 children who keep me on my toes. And and I've been working on this project now for
And
19 years.
Tell us the name of the project and just a brief summary for starters.
Yeah.
And then where is it located in relation to where you live?
Sure. So it's called The Eternal Wall of Answered Prayer, and it's a project to build a giant Mobius strip that arcs sort of 120 feet into the skyline, and it's made of 1 million bricks, and every brick is a story of answered prayer, so people will be able to point their phones at any one of the bricks and their phone will light up and it will tell them a story of hope that lies within it. And it's about 40 minutes from where I live.
Okay, so not too far from where you live. And so when someone will visit this site and see the brick, what will the individual brick, what will they see? Will they see?
So that physically it's just a small white brick. I mean, one of the things that we hope will be stunning for people, when you visit landmarks, I don't know about you, but I usually get there and go, it's a lot smaller than I thought, and we've tried to design this in such a way that actually you only get to see some of it externally, but when you get close you'll see this massive structure. But the bricks are really small. I mean, they're about the size of a credit card. And we hope that that is going to really wow people to see this massive structure, but then to know that, if you like, these 1 million credit card sized bricks all represent stories of answered prayer. And that should be a moment for people as they arrive.
And how did you tell us the story of how you got that vision?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit crazy. I was, so this was 19 years ago. Had a little more hair in those days, not quite so grey, but I felt God tell me to carry a cross around my county. And the idea was just to get people to think about Jesus during Easter. And, for them to know that this was about Jesus. And as I was doing that, we got quite a lot of PR coverage and a lot of coverage on local TV. So I'm walking around and I'm praying and I'm saying, God, what do you want me to do next? And then this image just flashed through my head of a wall made of 1 million bricks. I didn't really know what it looked like. I know that's difficult to describe, but I sort of got home and my wife looked at me and said, you got that twinkle in your eye, what's going on? And I said, I think we're going to build a national landmark.
Yeah, this was about prayer from the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to, I think the thing is for me, is that when I became a Christian, you sort of discover this world thinking, wow, why did I not know anything about this? Why was I not taught at school that Jesus is still alive and still answering prayer? And you can't get that sort of coverage on secular TV. So I think that was part of the driver for me, and I wanted to sort of communicate to the nations really that, hey, do you know what? He's still alive and he is still listening to us when we pray and he's still answering. And that's part of this vision, is that it's not just the physical in the UK, but we want to build a global iconic landmark that then people are Googling, and tens of millions of people Google Christ the Redeemer. And so we want to create this giant database of stories and testimonies and things that God has done, so that when people go online and when they go, hey, what's that about, they can actually find this database and maybe type in the storm of life that they are having, and then they can discover the hope that we have in Christ. And for us, this is a way to make hope visible to the nations.
That's very good. Yeah, no, it's not just random prayers, it's answered.
Correct. Yes. And some of those are suddenlies.
So, I'm sorry.
They're suddenlies. They're the moments when you pray and then God suddenly does
Yeah.
something. I've got some great stories like that to share, but then some are over decades. And I think it's good that we have the range. And then, of course, there are some, sometimes God doesn't answer the prayers the way that we would like. Sometimes the answer's no. But I think the story that we want to communicate is that Jesus is there to help you in those times as well. And that prayer for me is not we ask and we get. Prayer for me is about going on a journey. And I always say, I believe God's more interested in the journey we go on with Him and the relationship we deepen with Him than the actual answer itself.
And digital or online, I was going to say digitally, but online, then how do people get involved? What, they'll be able to see the prayers online as well?
They'll be able to access the prayers online, and they'll be able to, I had a disease in my spine that was incurable called ankylosing spondylitis. I had it for 25 years, and then one day God healed it like that. I'm hoping when somebody gets, when you get your diagnosis from the doctor, what do? We all go and have a Google, don't we, and see what it really, and I want instead people to find those stories as well.
And that search that you're talking about is for which particular phrase? I know for many probably, but
Yeah, so you'll be able to type in any situation, because with 1 million stories, we can have a lot covered.
okay.
I mean, we want to try and get to 200,000 stories of answered prayer by the time we open, so that it's a living monument, and we're going to light it up to the degree that we have answered prayers, so that people see that it's growing. And then once we hit 1 million, we'll light it up in a different way, I guess, and put 2 stories on every answered prayer. But I mean, we've got 2 crazy stories about people. I mean, we're only on about 35,000 answered prayers. Already we've got 2 stories about people pushing a Jeep out of a sand and getting stuck in the stand and God answering prayer. So it's amazing the sort of the breadth that we have already.
And where can people hear about this?
So
Read about it?
so if you go to theeternalwall.us, we have a website there, and we're asking people, can you help us? Can you please share your stories? If God's done something amazing, let us know. Because in Deuteronomy 4 verse 9, it says, don't let don't let what you've seen of God fade from your heart and your memory, and make sure that you tell your children and your children's children. And for me, this is a way of capturing the story of what God's done in your life, but then sharing it with the generations that follow. And one of the things that excites me is that, the story of God healing my back will be on that wall. And people are going to read that long after I've left the planet. 100 years' time, my hope and my prayer is that people are going to read that story and discover the God of answers. And I think that's a great way for us as Christians to see how we can support the generations to come, because it's a crazy world right now. Who knows what it's going to look like in 40 years' time? What I can tell you is there's going to be an absolutely gigantic national monument dedicated to Jesus answering prayer that they'll be able to access.
So how has this project impacted your life?
Gosh.
It's different.
Yeah. I mean, it's taken over my life, that's for sure. I think the thing that I've learned is that if you dream, and if it's God's dream, He can do anything. And I'm learning not to be impacted by facts, but by impacted by the truth. So there are loads of times in the journey where we've just been surrounded by the impossible. There's no way we should be at where we are now, but God has broken through. I mean, I can tell you a story if you like. Of
Sure,
that.
yes,
I mean,
please.
so we were praying for land, and I presented this concept in Parliament, and one of them in Parliament, in the Houses of Parliament, I presented the eternal wall idea, and one of the members of Parliament said, "Well, it's a great idea, but how are you going to fund this?" And I just said to him, "I've got a really big investor behind me. I only had £5 in the bank, but I know Jesus is behind me and it'll be okay." And that was sort of put to the test because we needed to find land. And so I went to Bethel Church in Redding, California.
Yes.
And we just went there, my wife and I, to pray. And nobody knew who we were or what we were doing. And then this lady came up to us and she said, "God wants you to know He's got some heavenly land for you." We're like, what? I mean, that's really cool for me to go halfway across the planet and God to speak so clearly. And then I told my team back in the UK, "Hey, this is what God said, He's got some land." And one of my team said, "Well, I'm going to ask Him where it is." So she went off to pray, and then she sent me a Google map with a piece of land circled and went, "Here it is, this is where it's going to be." And what she didn't know was just a few days before, the person who owned that land had emailed me and asked to meet. And so I meet with this guy, and he, big businessman in the UK, and God had spoken to me 19 years ago. He then tells me that God had spoken to him 19 and a half years ago with the same vision, and he'd set up a trust fund to fund it. And amazing. And then he sort of said, "Well, I'm going to go away and pray," and came back and he said, "I'm going to give you some land." And I didn't want to tell him where the woman had circled because I didn't want to manipulate him.
Yes.
And so he gave me some land, but it was not the piece that was circled. So everybody's like, she was like, "That's not the piece." I'm like, "He's just given us some land, let's rejoice." And but 6 months later he phoned up and he said, "I can't give you that land anymore." So then he gave me another piece of land. And then 6 months later he phoned up and said, "I can't give you that land anymore." And then his father said, "Look, stop messing this guy about, give him the best land." He said, "I believe God's spoken to him, give him the best land." So he paid an architect to look at all his land they owned in the United Kingdom. And guess which bit the architect came back with? The piece that the woman had circled some time before. So we've seen incredible favour of God, really.
It's interesting because this morning there was a prayer session about NRB, their first kind of a small group of people praying
Yeah.
the whole convention. And the person leading it asked us to if anybody wanted to share their burning bush moment.
Right.
And so prayer is such an essential part of our relationship. So this is your way of letting other people know also how important prayer is.
Yeah.
And even you recalling that story about how you got the land, it's important to keep sharing.
Yeah, it is.
Even for ourselves, whether we're seasoned.
Yeah. Well, I think that that when we remember what God has done, we're effectively recalibrating our minds as to who He is. Because it's really easy, I think, when you get hammered with the facts of life all the time and all the storms of life, that you can forget who He is. And what we do, and when I say we, I mean my family and our organisation, we have built into our devotion remembering what He's done. Because if you remember what He's done, and we've had times in this project where we are a whisker away from the whole thing falling apart. And at that moment I go, yeah, but wait a second. God gave me the land. He's definitely for this project. And even though it looks like a dark day, He's not changing. He doesn't change His mind. And I think, we, for example, my wife and I, in terms of provision for us personally, we have a book and we write down every time God blesses us. So when we're in times of, oh my word, how are we gonna make it through this month? We just read the book and go, hey, wait a second. Look at what our Jehovah Jireh's done. We're in good shape here. And I think it just recalibrates your mind to remember who He is instead of the sort of present pressure. Does that make sense?
Yes, most definitely. Thank you, Richard. Any other thing that you would like to add in regards to this project?
I think it's an opportunity for this generation to really share with the generations to come, and that's why I'd want to encourage anybody who hears about it. You can just spend 5 minutes, go to Eternal Wall US. There's no charge. Don't need to give us any money. We just want your story, and just giving us 5 minutes of your time is going to impact thousands upon thousands of people.
Are you going to build a visitors kiosk?
Yeah, we have a. I just got the funding for that last week actually. So yeah, we're going to build a big visitor centre, and in the visitor centre we're going to be very clear in what we believe. This is why we believe Jesus answers prayer. One of the challenges that I've had on the zoning was they wanted it to be multi-faith, and I said no. I said we live in a multi-faith society. That should be that we have the freedom to express our faith how we see fit, and that's been our red line. So we're going to be bringing tens of thousands of school kids to that site with a very clear exhibition on why we believe Jesus is alive and He answers prayer.
So you're going to have an audience locally and countrywide.
Yeah.
And hopefully from other countries.
That's
right?
Yeah. Because we've got, nationally, 800,000 journeys go past that will go past that monument every week.
By journeys.
So it's incredible placement of God. We're in between the two biggest motorways in the UK, so just where they connect. We are in the UK just building a massive super speed rail network. We are just at the point as it slows down to go from the biggest city in the country to the second biggest city in the country. And the airport, as you take off, you can see it on your right hand side. So we could not have dreamed of a better location.
Very good. All for the glory of God.
All for the glory of God, yeah. Amen.
All right, thank you.
Is that okay?
That's good.
Have you done like a small version of it?
Like a
model?
Like a model?
Well, no, like in a location where people could test it, or
No, not at this stage. It's incredibly difficult to build in terms of engineering.
yeah,
So no, it's like go big or go home.
yeah,
So to give you an idea of size, the height of the wall, like just the blocks, will probably be double this, and then that loops up. So each block has about 10,500 bricks on it.
So this is Christ the Redeemer, and that's how big it'll be compared to these different buildings. So it's pretty big.
Yeah, we were just.
can we keep this?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I suppose the idea is, you're only going to get to do this once, so we might as well just go big. I've gone for the biggest I can get, and at the time I was very naive on how much that was going to cost. But again, God's been amazing and just provided the finance.
Did you give it projected opening?
Yeah. So we will open in 2026.
2026.
Wow, that's gonna be fast.
Yeah, we're well on. We've just finished building the access road, the road to get to the lab, and so we are. It's a 2-year build.
I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
Well, the interview is very good, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
You're my first one, so
Oh,
I'm
good.
just
I want my
learning as I go. But any feedback welcome.
So did you say you went to the art?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
really cool. And do you know what inspired me was, they've been really clear on what they believe, and they've stuck to it, and you can just sense God's blessing on them.
Yes.
And they're going to partner with us once we're up and running, and we work together to just share what God's doing.
Okay.
Great, thank you for your time. Thank you for giving me your time. I really appreciate it.